Star Wars. The saga does not end after Return of the Jedi for Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, Han Solo, and the rest. And no, I'm not talking about the new movies. We're talking about the books that were written in the 80s and 90s. Next on Some Cereal for Dinner podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to Some Cereal for Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Ian C. I'm glad you could be joining us today. Today is an awesome episode. I had an interview with Brian Anderson, who has read a majority of the Star Wars books that came out in the 80s and in the 90s. And as you know, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, and I always really wanted to know what happened after Return of the Jedi. And I'm not talking about the stories that we got from Disney, but actually what happened to the characters as it was written in the books of that era. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about all about what happened to Luke Skywalker, what happened to Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, and some other things like that. Also some Mandalorian stuff and a little bit of excursion on the prequels and the postquels and things like that as well. So join us for this episode. But before we go to the interview, I just want to remind you that you can help us out in a couple ways here. You can always like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on podcast form, please leave us an honest review on whether or not you're listening on YouTube or a podcast. Please share it on your favorite social media. It really helps us out here quite a bit. We are doing some upgrades. This is the first interview that I have where I actually use these two microphones behind me instead of just speaking right into the camera here. So it's actually interesting. It's actually cool. We're actually making upgrades. I'm renovating a room out. So anything you can do to help. And if you want to go to that one extra step, we always have the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below, which will take you to that page where you can donate some finances if you are so inclined and you want to see us grow this program. I'm dedicated to making this the best program possible and making it interesting for you, the listeners. So anything helps, and we really appreciate it. So thanks a lot, and we will go to the interview now. Brian Anderson, how you doing?
Pretty good, mate. Thanks. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm glad to have you on the show.
Appreciate the offer.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. We live in the same house, and you've been the toughest guest I've had on the program with all the construction and stuff that's going on with where we're living. But the reason I have you on the show is because you've been involved with well, I don't know what to say, an event or whatever, not event, but you've been, let me just put it this way, you've been reading the Star Wars books for a long time.
Sure.
And that's something I've been interested in for a long time because I was a huge Star Wars fan. Still am a huge Star Wars fan. But, you know, I didn't grow up reading well. And so, you know, the books to me, like the only reason I ever read was for information purposes, and that's it. I didn't read for entertainment at all. So I was always kind of wondering, like, what happened with Star Wars and all that stuff. Sure. And so, but you've read most all of them, haven't you?
Most of them after the last of the second, or the original trilogy.
Okay.
The pre-ones, the Clone Wars and things, I haven't had much to do with those. I've mostly counted on the extended, what we call the EU, the extended universe, after.
If you pull that up just a little tiny bit, sure. Pull it up, okay.
And I started reading it just, I don't know, maybe a year or two after the last of the original three came out, and I wasn't even aware there were books. Like yourself, I didn't read. I mean, there's a movie and a T-shirt. What do you want to read for?
Right.
Which is the wrong attitude, by the way. Don't listen to me, children. But I found out there was a line of books, and I found out quite by accident that there was a novel that came after Star Wars, and I went to my local library and they had it. And I started reading what I thought was the first novel in the series. Turned out I'd started in the wrong place. But that was okay because I got to go back, and basically I've read most of them.
So what was the novel that you read?
The first one I read was called Truce at Bakura, or Bakura, depending on how you pronounce it, written by Kathy Tyers, Tyers, still available.
Okay.
In fact, my wife has it in the bedroom. She's actually reading it. That was the first one, and it involved an invasion from another galaxy, a short-lived one because there was only one book.
Okay.
By a group of aliens called the Shishi Rook, and it basically was Luke Skywalker rescuing everybody again in that book.
Interesting. So that was the second book in the series, or the second book since it had been out?
No, that was the first standalone novel.
Okay.
Which, if you didn't read anything else, you haven't lost anything. It was all in that novel for you. There was a series before that. There's X-Wing. There's a whole pile of them actually. X-Wing and Back to Wars and the Corellian Wars, and then the Han Solo trilogy.
Okay.
So they all came at different times. The one that I first read was probably the fourth one in the line. So I should have read the first three, then that one, and that. But again, Truce at Bakura stands on its own, so you don't really have to read everything to understand it.
Okay. All right. And then you started reading it shortly after 1983.
A couple of years after that, yeah, just a couple of years after it finished, yeah.
And how old were you when you discovered it?
I have to count now. Hang on a minute. Counting. I would have been in my
like late teens, 18, 19?
Sort of around the 20s, just getting into my 20s.
Okay.
I was fairly busy with lots of other things, so reading was never something I wanted to do. And as I said, I discovered by accident there was more books. So.
Okay, so in the books, we now, a personal story aside, just talking about the books itself, where do those books start after? Do they start immediately after Return of the Jedi, or how are they arranged?
Okay, I believe it's about 5 to 7 years after. That's what begins, and it basically begins with following up on the thread line of the Han Solo smuggling type issue. Okay. So they sort of take that a bit further, and they blend in some of the people that we see in the original trilogy. Wedge Antilles has a series of his own, and so do a couple of other people. So they. The good thing about the novels is that they're written by 4 or 5 people who work together.
So you were talking about the writers there. We had a small interruption. Sorry, we got people working on the house right now. So we had a small interruption, kind of broke our train of thought, a little bit of the flow of the conversation. But you were talking about the writers.
Yeah, the writers themselves all collaborated to a point, from what I understand. There's 4 or 5 of them. Timothy Zahn is a particular popular author with a lot of people. His books are very good. I always look forward to his books. Kathy Tyers has done a few, and I'm going to be rude and not remember the other 3 now. I can't think of the other 3, but the fact that they collaborated, and often in the front of the novels you'll see that they say thank you to such and such, whoever helped them. So there is and there needed to be that cooperation, I think, to get a timeline, a storyline that everybody could follow through. There'd be no point in everybody doing the same thing and going in different directions. So it's worked out pretty well.
So did they have any books in 83, 84, 85? Because I'm sure that you're looking at it a few years after, but I'm sure you're not just reading from that point on. You're reading, you go, oh, these are books. I wonder what other books there are that have already been written.
Exactly right. Once I found Truce at Bakura at the library, it wasn't on its own. On the library shelf, there was like 40 or 50 Star Wars books. Most of them were picture books and stories along the same as the movie line, but there was this little area of novels, and that sort of grabbed my thing. And as I said, it was at the local library, so free. Right. My favourite cost. So it was easy just to go back, but then I read them quicker than they could get them in, so I had to start buying them.
Oh no, yeah, you had to start buying them. So go back to the earliest, not the earliest in your story, but the earliest that you read during that time. Like, what would be the earliest that you read, and tell us a little bit about that story, if you can remember.
I want to say it was the Back to Wars. The trilogy about the Back to Wars, and which involved Corellia and smuggling basically Again, I'm not an expert, so I may get this wrong exactly in the timeline.
And he wanted to say that up front, by the way. He actually, before we were talking, he wanted to say, I'm not an expert. So he's just really somebody who's read a lot of the books. And, if he gets it wrong in places, you're just going to have to forgive him and forgive, the podcast or whatever. So I just, I'm just asking you, just from what you can remember.
Sure.
As far as they're concerned.
So the Bacta Wars, whoever got control of the Bacta was as a smuggling thing was going to do pretty well out of that. So that became a trilogy about trying to get control of the Bacta factories that were abound. It was also the beginnings of Luke considering a new Jedi order where you have to have apprentices, and he started to search for people that he thought might be force worthy to join as an apprentice or master, depending on what they were. He didn't actually find a master, but and then that led to the establishment of the Jedi Academy on Yavin 4. So.
Okay, all right, and that was basically what that book was about. That seems like it would be pretty quickly after Return of the Jedi in the story.
Yeah, it wasn't too far after that. Once he started to looking, then the books basically after that seemed to follow in that general apprentice's direction, and that I think was the mainstream of the storyline going forward.
All right, okay. And so what were some of the adventures of Luke Skywalker as a result of starting this Jedi Academy?
Yeah. He looks a lot for with the destruction of the original Academy. There's no books or anything around to look around for. So he's actually looking for journals and information on it, and he goes to a number of different places. One of my favourites is Darthmere. The Witches of Darthmere. They're women who are force sensitive, but from a bad point of view.
Okay.
So Luke has to try and win their confidence and turn them and all sorts of things. And then the Vuz and Vong come into it, and they're another galaxy invaders. And most of the storylines then are along how the apprentices come into the story on their own with help. In particular, a lot of them die. I don't want to give that away, I suppose.
No spoilers. This is spoilers. I mean, these books have been out since the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I'd hate to spoil it for anybody. And as I said, the advantage of the books is if you don't read them all, you're not going to miss a lot. But getting them in order helps, So
right.
And they're all trilogies, which is great.
So each set is a trilogy, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
By different authors.
By different authors, yeah.
And now, did Lucas have any rules as far as... Because you can't just pick up a book and write Star Wars and start writing stuff and publish it.
Sure, yeah. I believe there was a mechanism in place where he would look at all the stories once they were written, but I also believe that he went to one or two meetings as well where they gathered and spoke.
Okay.
He was all for it. As I understand, he was very encouraging about how he wanted it to go, and he was on board with everybody. I'm not aware of any issues where he wasn't happy with any of the novels. There's another book that's written about him and his involvement in Star Wars by Michael. I can't think of his last name. If you can get hold of it, that's a really good book. It tells you all about George Lucas's involvement in all the Star Wars parts. But as far as I know, he was very much fostered it along. Was very happy to see it going along, and had a quick read of what had to go out. And I guess he didn't have to have the publishing go ahead, but he did, and it was good. Yeah.
Now, you were a bigger fan, let's just say this, we've had these discussions before, and I want to keep it relevant to the books as well, but you were a bigger fan of the prequels than I was personally, and then my perspective is kind of in the middle. I there were a lot of things about the prequels that I enjoyed, and there were a lot of things that I didn't enjoy, and of course I don't like them as compared to the original trilogy itself anyway. But is there anything that because like if I'm watching the movies, the original series, and then I watch the prequels, there's some things that kind of don't jive together. For example, let me just say this one thing. For example, it seems like in the prequels that the Jedis are much more like monks, kind of like Shaolin monks, kind of a thing. Where it seems like in the storylines, and then the storyline which you told here with Luke starting an academy, it seems more like we're signing up for the army rather than a religious order. It seems like that. Is that the case, or is there some explanation?
Yeah.
And then are there other ways in which they don't coincide or get along.
Sure. Part of the extension novels after the last one is shows Luke fighting mentally with himself about how the Order should be established and which way it should go. I mean, we all remember Anakin in the first Phantom Menace saying that how he got around the fact that we're not supposed to have attachments, and
right.
How he got around that. Well, Luke obviously learnt from that, and he knew that the Jedi Order could never be the same as what it was, but he wanted to keep it as clear as he could.
Okay.
He didn't want to have the boundaries, and he wanted everybody to be on the same page. And he was very focused on making sure that he got to all the different races in the galaxy. He didn't want it to be a humanoid, if you like, only sort of thing. He believed that other races enjoyed the Force as much as he did, but may not have had control or knowledge of it that he had. So he was fighting with himself a little bit internally about how he was going to set it up and how he was going to take it forward.
Okay. So Luke's going through this idea like, well, the Jedi failed for a reason, and I'm not going to continue to repeat that reason, kind of a thing, and maybe make it a little bit more voluntary, a little bit more. Is that am I reading that? Am I reading that correctly?
I wish I could remember exactly where it is, but there is a conversation with a Jedi Master called Kilgal a little bit later on, who's a Mon Calamari, and he basically says to her, she's sort of a confidant. He basically says to her, "I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing about the direction we're going," and then she gives him the story about let the Force guide you, the Force will tell you which way to go. And then she basically says, you cannot make a mistake. Everything is a learning from here going forward. And he sort of takes that on board and repeats that several times.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, well, then is there anything that doesn't else kind of jive between the because the books are written before the movies, before the prequels come out.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So is there anything else that kind of doesn't jive in your mind that sticks out kind of as a sore thumb or no, or any not thing that doesn't stick out, any real good connection point between the prequels and the storyline?
I look at the prequels a little bit differently to everybody else in that, well, not everybody else, I'm sure other people agree with me, I don't know, in that the prequels are made to stitch the story together to make the next three relevant or correct.
Yeah.
So there was lots of threads he picked up, and I thought he did a very good job with connecting to the next three movies, the middle three movies.
Right.
I didn't see there was any issue when I remember watching the last one and sitting in the theatre talking to my brother about the fact that I thought that was fine, it wrapped it all up, and my brother's saying, well, no, he didn't wrap it all up. And then we talked about a couple of things, and things like Obi-Wan should have saved Anakin regardless. He should never have let him burnt in the third one. He thinks that the true Jedi would have saved him at all costs.
Yeah.
Whereas he didn't. Obi-Wan obviously abandoned him and said, I've got the high ground,
Well, then afterwards he takes off. Yeah. He's like, I'm out of here.
I'm done.
See ya.
Yeah, thanks
Good
very much.
luck with your hopes and dreams.
Yeah, you're dead. I don't need to know about it, which, again, the two schools of thoughts is if he saved him, it may have been a different outcome, but he left him for the Emperor.
Yeah.
So the Emperor got him, which continued on the story as we know it. So really Obi-Wan is responsible for what happens after that.
Right.
But he doesn't obviously take that responsibility.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, did you read any of the Clone Wars books or anything like that?
I actually started the Phantom Menace. I did actually start the Phantom Menace. I did not complete it.
Okay.
I didn't enjoy it, the book, as much as I enjoyed the film, which I guess has been a problem all my life. I always liked the film better. But I didn't enjoy the way I enjoyed. I didn't enjoy it the way I enjoyed the extended universe novels. So I stopped reading it.
So now we got the Solo movie that's come out, cut into his origins, and whether or not we're going to get more, I don't know. I haven't heard anything whether or not we're going to get more or less. I loved that movie. I thought it was great. I don't know why people were hating on it.
Yeah.
But I actually enjoyed that movie. How close is that story to what you've read as far as the books are concerned, as far as like his origin story?
Sure. Again, very good in the fact that it connected a lot of dots, especially from what I read later on, not so much in the movies, but a lot of the earlier stuff that he did and how he came to be in the family, the Sal Solo family, how he came to be in that family, which is a rich family on Corellia, how he got into that family later on and what happened and all that sort of thing connected really well for me.
Okay.
If you didn't know that stuff, it didn't matter because I thought, as like you did, I thought it was an excellent film. I'm disappointed they didn't go forward with it, and Unfortunately, the Star Wars fans have got to be blamed for that as much as Disney does.
Yeah.
But and then Rogue One, of course, which was an excellent film in my opinion.
Rogue One was excellent as well.
And both of them were exceptional films, and I didn't find fault in any of them. I have a bit of a laugh with my wife and a few people about the ending of it. But
at the end of Rogue One?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you go back and watch it, Tarkin says just target the facility, blow the facility up. He doesn't say blow the world up. He says target the facility, so they blow the facility up. Now you see the two of them at the end, sitting on the beach, both wounded, and the wave coming towards them. So you can safely assume that they've been killed.
Yeah.
Or have they? Because they only blew up the facility, not the world. Could they possibly survive that? Which would then give them a window for a second. And of course, we are going to get the TV series for the guy. His name escapes me now.
The main guy in the show.
I was going to say not Andor Calrissian. I can't think of his name. Sorry.
That's all right.
I apologise, guys. Sorry
That's
about
that. What? So, what were some of the things that you were? So now let's talk about the postquels for a second, and we'll go back and forth here between the prequels and the postquels and the books and things like that. But what did they follow the story at all as far as what happened with the post series, or
not at all?
Not at all.
Not in any way. I watched those three with the hope that I could pick out some EU content in those films. I couldn't pick out any at all, or I might have missed one, but I don't think so. I've watched them several times now each. It was just a different direction altogether, and Disney made it very clear that they weren't interested in carrying on with the canon at all. So it was a standalone on its own, basically. So you can't say it was wrong because there's nothing to compare it to.
Right. So what was the story? What was the story? And I mean, my biggest gripe with the well, I shouldn't. I don't even know where to begin with that. I know where to begin with the prequels because I kind of have clear ideas about what I liked about them, what I didn't like about them, and for the most part, there's more I like about them than I dislike about them. There's really only a few things I dislike about the prequels, but the postquels is just like I don't even know where to start. So and of course I didn't read any of the books. So I don't know if you being a fan of the books and going, oh, these are the stories we're going to see, and then watching the movie, were you disappointed or no?
I'd have to say very disappointed.
Okay.
But I temper that by saying that I knew before watching them that Disney wasn't going to follow the canon.
Okay.
So I didn't go in expecting to get anything that was going to satisfy me in that direction.
Yeah.
What I was looking for was, I guess, that original trilogy feeling where you, after the first one, you went out and you're just like, oh, you want to talk about it all the time, and let's go back and watch it. I mean, the original one I went back and saw maybe 5 times in a theatre in the space of 2 days.
Yeah.
Like everybody else did. But with the last 3, there wasn't that excitement at the end of the film. It was like, okay, it's a story. I can see the story where it's going. We can all say it's a lot like this or it's a lot like that. But there was a story in it. So obviously the story is all about Rey and finding, her parentage, etc. But I wasn't disappointed with the film, but I wasn't as excited as I was with the others.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I was seriously disappointed. The things that and we can talk about the film for just a second. We don't have to talk exclusively about the books. This is a big Star Wars conversation here.
Right.
But the things that I really didn't like is that they didn't give us as fans what we were really hoping for. I was really hoping for more Luke Skywalker.
Right.
I was really hoping for more, as it developed, a lightsaber scene with Luke Skywalker. I mean, he has this Force Phantom lightsaber scene, and then to bring back the Emperor. I know I'm cramming a lot of these things together, and then just the fact that these stories just resemble the original so much, and then it's like there's no new development. It's just kind of the same story. A desert planet, somebody who's doesn't have parents. It's like, okay, a big space blow up thing. Like, okay, we're getting the same thing here over again, and then the fact that they brought back the Emperor at the end, I just was like, come on, give me let's just then the PC thing too. I mean, everything's like politically correct, and that kind of just like. I don't. It's like I don't mind PC stuff. It's okay with me. But when somebody they go out of their way to make it PC, it's just like, look, I just want to enjoy the story. I don't need the political statement.
Right.
I'll ask you if I want your opinion.
Right.
So,
Well, there's two things I can say about that. First, let me step back and just say there was nothing in the books that were in the movie, but in the books, Palpatine does return and is killed again. So let me just get that clear so everybody
in the
knows.
books.
In
Now,
the books.
what era of the books?
That is in the...
Is it like the 90s or the 2000s or?
it's going to be in the 90s.
Okay.
It's going to be in the 90s. Again, he's beaten by Luke, but he
So
does return.
In the 90s, Palpatine does return.
Yeah, in the book, yeah.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Okay, it is crazy. I agree with you.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it's all right with me. I don't care. I
Yeah.
mean, people write whatever they want. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. So
What we have to understand as Star Wars fans, or we didn't, but we should, is that the last three films that we saw are commercial films. They're not movies for entertainment. They are Disney's version of commercial film. All they wanted to do was take something that has been successful for many years and introduce it to a new generation of kids and families and get them excited about it. And they decided that the old stories, Luke and Leia and Han, weren't going to get it done. They wanted to introduce new people.
I got it.
Okay, so you get Poe and Dameron and Kelly, who everybody hates. You get all those people introduced in new three films because they wanted a commercial success to build upon. It wasn't about living the legend that was,
Okay.
So phasing, sooner or later, we all know that Han, Leia, and Luke are going to pass anyway.
Right.
So let's make it part of the story so that we can keep the thread rolling. And commercially, that's how they did it. Commercially, that's how they did it. They just made three films that would sell, that everybody would go to, and introduce a new generation of people to
Right.
Star Wars. So whatever happens in the future now, I can almost guarantee you won't get anything that was in the prequels or the main three. It'll all be what's based now on the last three.
Yeah, I think that's what disappointed the fans in some way, because the fans, especially, those of us who are Generation X, kind of,
Yep.
grew up and, that was a big deal in our life to watch those movies, and they were phenomenal movies. We want to know about these people. We want to see what happens with them.
Right.
Those are the people that we grew attached to. And just to kind of, Han gets killed right away in the first one, and and then Luke dies in the second one, and is it the second one or the third one where he dies? I can't remember.
Luke dies in the third one.
Okay, well, I thought isn't at the end he kind of force ghosts out or whatever. So anyway, yeah, that was a little disappointing. Where I was really hoping to get what I had heard about the books from you and from other people, that I've ran into who read the books, and you hear about these adventures and stuff like that. And I remember this one adventure. This guy was telling me that they captured Luke in a cage and they shifted it. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that.
Gee, that's a hard one.
Do you remember or no?
No,
I don't, because I can't remember.
When he's captured by the Shishi Rook in Truce of Bakra, he is put into a cage, and those particular aliens are very good with force mind. Not the force, but they have mind control, very good mind control. And he was placed in a cage, and everybody they mind controlled died. It was just automatically after they mind controlled you, you're dead. He wasn't, and that was the thrill. But they kept moving his cage around that he was locked in to try and confuse him. But then you go to it. There's another one where he's captured by the Vuzen Vong, which is my favourite storyline, the Vuzen Vong, in the whole of the books. But he's captured by them, and he's moved around a lot in a cage as well. So there could be a couple of different ways that people are talking to you about it. So.
Okay, all right. Let's now move into. We're talking a lot about Luke, and of course, for me, that's the big deal. And I watch Star Wars. Basically, the two things that I like the most about Star Wars, is the Jedi for number one. That's like my number one thing, and then I do like the bounty hunters kind of thing. That's kind of fun to watch too. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other people that we grew attached to and what their story was like in the book. So, for example, Princess Leia. What happens to her after Return of the Jedi in the books?
There's quite a lot that she goes through. She actually becomes the leader of the Galactic Alliance at one stage, and she does that, and Han and her live in the palace, and the whole thing like that. And then there's the Hapes, a group of galaxy called the Hapes Consortium, which are part of the Alliance. And it's the female of the species is the superior, the male is subordinate in that. She's actually gone. She actually goes there in part of the storyline to try and talk them into sending their battle fleet to help out in a fleet. But to do that, she has to marry some guy. It's actually called The Courtship of Princess Leia. Is the name of the book. She has to marry a Hapen guy, which is good and bad. She doesn't want to do that, and of course, Han's not real happy about that.
Well, of course.
So anyway, it doesn't happen, but I mean, that's not spoiling the story. You'll understand the story when you see it. But then she basically gets through that, and then there's the Vuzan Vong invasion, where she's again she becomes a rebel. Basically, she has to escape and become a rebel and get the rebellion against the Vuzan Vong, which is mostly focused on destroying the Jedi all over again, or Jedi as they call them. And then we get past that one, and then she becomes her son has a child with a lady by the name of Tenor Ka, who's also a Jedi, but she becomes the female leader of the Hapen cluster, which is why I mention it. She has a child, and to protect the child from her son, because her son we know turns bad and later on, she becomes the grandmother to that child. So her and Han basically hide the child all over the galaxy, and that's pretty much where the books have gone.
Okay, all right. Anything on Lando in those times?
Lando pops up every now and then.
Nothing specific, or
he gets married and he becomes involved in whatever Han and Leia are involved in. He helps out with it. There's nothing specific about him. There are some novels about him that I have not read. Two of them. There's only two of them. I'm not sure what they're called, but he gets married and he marries a very attractive woman, and he becomes an arms dealer, arms supplier.
Okay.
And becomes a very important part of the Vuzan Vong War, and then afterwards becomes part of the Galactic Alliance again. So.
Okay. He doesn't go back and rebuild Sky City?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't need to, actually. He does pretty well out of it. I mean...
What is Sky City? I never understood. What is that? Do you know what that is?
Basically, it's a gas mine.
Okay.
And I want to say Tibbana gas mine. Someone will correct me on that. Tibbana, I think it is, gas mine. And it's basically where the science of it is not important, but when the clouds crash together, the particles produce a gas which is mined and then can be used as fuel or building elements and stuff like that. The problem is, like all mines, you can't get enough of it in a hurry to process it to make money, which is why you see him say, I have labour problems, and there's problems in the movie. And he doesn't really want to be, respectable, if you like. So when he says, I advise everybody to leave, it's not a big loss for him, really. He can just start over again.
Yeah.
And does.
Yeah. Well, good for him.
Yeah.
And so let's get to we talked a little bit about Solo before.
Yep.
What about Solo afterwards? Like from Jedi on, what's
all
going
right.
on
So
in his story?
I have to ask if you want me to give you a big spoiler here or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look, there's going to be spoilers. That's all there is to it.
During the Vuzan Vong invasion, Han and Chewbacca go to a planet called Serpendal, or Serpindal, and evacuate people before the Vuzan Vong come.
Okay.
During the evacuation, they put way too many people on the Falcon than they should have. And the back door is hanging open, and Chewie's trying to hold everybody in, and he's struck and killed.
Yeah.
So losing Chewie was like, I think the pages are stuck together for the tears. There you go. I didn't expect that. It was like, I remember putting the book down and saying, no, you can't kill Chewbacca. It's ridiculous. Who is this plan? Anyway, it turns out he spends quite a few years on his own. He doesn't want to go back to Leia. He doesn't want to. He doesn't even want to fly. He drinks and goes around starting fights he can't win, and that sort of thing. So he has that, and until he gets another co-pilot who helps him out. So he does that, and then when Tenel Ka has the child, and Leia asks him to come back and look after the granddaughter, he comes back into it again there, and he's more a background figure as it goes further on. I mean, he's still a strong presence, but he is a background figure.
Yeah, right. Well, I would not be complete in talking about these books without asking about Boba Fett, because we all love Boba Fett. He unexpectedly took the imagination of people. We literally don't see him except for in the Christmas story.
All right.
which was a travesty.
You're not right.
I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Well, yeah, again, another commercial of Enterprise that nobody liked, not even the
Right.
people who were on it. So I don't know why it got made, but anyway.
And I think it was just that he looked so badass.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks so cool.
Yeah.
And then when you start hearing about his story, about how those locks on his thing are Wookiee locks, and honestly, my favorite, one of my favorite scenes, I don't know if it's my favorite scene, but one of my favorite scenes in the prequels is Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting Jango Fett, because it's like these two different martial arts styles. It's like these two totally, they're equal. They're equal as far as their skill is concerned, and but they're different. One uses this kind of stuff, the other one uses a lightsaber, right. but they're really cool. And then I know that he gets. Boba Fett gets, they kill him off in the third one, and the fans go, this is not the way it's going to end for Boba Fett.
All right.
So tell me a little bit about, and then of course you got, the new Mandalorian series. So tell me a little bit about what happened to Boba Fett. Did he die in that Sarlacc? Was it Sarlacc? The
Sarlacc pit? Yeah.
Yeah. Did he die there or no?
No, vicious rumor.
Okay.
No, he didn't die. He survived it. And really, the Boba Fett has become popular because if you know the backstory is brilliant. The ongoing stories are brilliant. I would go as far as to say that Boba Fett and the Mandalorians were the reason I kept reading the books, especially the series, the trilogy on the Mandalorians. Most people don't realise that the Mandalorian isn't a race; it's a code. It's like a tribe. They actually live on a different planet under a different name. And they only become fighters because their planet becomes barren. They can't support the people, so they go out and sell themselves to keep the planet going. So they have a very, very strong family ethic, and he still does things for money, and he kills people, and he tortures people and stuff. But he has a moral background that pops up all the time, and you think, well, he doesn't have to do that, but he did. And I guess that's the appeal of the new Mandalorian TV series. He has a bit more of a moral thing about him, and really that is Boba Fett. I mean, what you're looking at is what Boba Fett really was like as well.
Okay.
So I was so glad that.
So what happened to him? Like, what would the book say happened to him? He goes in the Sarlacc pit.
Yep. Okay, so he goes in the Sarlacc pit. I don't know how he gets out of the pit. I have to be honest. I don't know how he gets out of the pit. I'm told by two books that the jetpack activated and kicked him out 12 hours later because, remember, the Sarlacc slowly digests you. He manages to get his thing going and gets kicked out. I can't confirm that, but that's what I've been told. So then he goes back to Tatooine and threatens to kill Jabba. Jabba gives him back his plane, his ship, and he leaves and goes back to doing what he does, which is bounty hunting.
I thought Jabba died. These are the books. So it's just like anything's possible, right? Okay.
Okay, yeah, you need to read the books.
Okay, all right. So, but in the book, after he gets into the Sarlacc pit, he goes back to Jabba's.
He goes back to Jabba's palace because, remember, Slave 1 is there, and Slave 1 is something he won. He'll never give up Slave 1, even though he could upgrade to a better ship because he is a trillionaire. He's not short of money. He's a trillionaire. But he wants his ship back, and he can't live without his ship. So he gets his ship, and he and Jabba get into a fight, but he leaves basically.
Okay, all right, interesting. Now the kids, Leia and Han's kids. They have kids. They join the Jedi Order at around, as I have talked to people who have also read the books, around 14. And is are they called Ben and something else or what?
Yeah, I've got to make sure I get this right. Luke's and Mara's son is named Ben.
Okay.
So he's Ben Skywalker. Now, Han and Leia have 3 children.
Okay, Luke and Mara's son is called Ben.
Correct.
In
the books. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So, a bit angry they switched that into the movies, but anyway.
Is he named after Ben Kenobi?
Correct.
Okay.
And then Luke and Leia have 3 children. The twins, which are Jaina and Jason.
Okay.
And then the third one, whose name is Anakin.
Okay.
They named him Anakin.
After who?
Can't think. Oddly, a lot of his traits are the same as Anakin, as the original Anakin. He's very good with machinery, and in fact, not just telling anybody anything out of the thing, but he ends up destroying a world. So,
Whoopsie.
yeah, sorry about that. Which doesn't get him any love in the galaxy, of course.
All right.
And Jaina and Jason, if you read the book, go on to be Jaina is called the Sword of the Jedi. Jason becomes the next bad guy.
Okay.
Cadius was what we call him. He becomes the guy. He becomes the guy for a reason. I'm going to say the reason so I get it on tape. He believes that with the Empire in charge, there are less wars, there are less smuggling, there are less drugs. He believes with one person in charge and having a boot on everybody's neck, that the galaxy is far better off. There are no wars.
Okay.
That's his belief, and he does a lot of travelling before he becomes Cadius, and he learns. He goes to different planets to learn. I guess it's like a soul searching thing.
Okay.
Where he learns different ways of using the Force from different families and different people, different cultures, and why they use the Force and why they don't use the Force. And then he comes to this understanding with himself that he thinks if he can take control of the universe, he can stop wars. Mm-hmm. He can stop pestilence and everything like that. He can move, when planet goes broke, he can move money to the planet without having to ask anybody. He can. His idea is to bring the universe into balance, and peace is for him to control the universe.
Okay.
Okay, so he becomes the bad guy.
Okay.
And then, do you want to know how he dies?
Yes. Okay, spoilers ahead.
Spoilers ahead, yeah. So eventually, after a lot of good people die and after a few pretty good battles, his sister kills him. Jaina kills him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
she's called the Sword of the Jedi for a reason. Luke calls her that many years before. When he anoints her as a master, he says, "You will be the Sword of the Jedi."
Wow.
And then she is faced with the idea of does she kill her brother or doesn't she? And there's a big conflict. And eventually she does.
Okay.
She has to. She has no choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, there you go.
All right, so let's talk about the bad guys. Let's talk about after Return of the Jedi happens, and we're reading these books. Mm-hmm. Is the Empire just gone, or are there people who are like high generals and stuff who say, "Look, no, I'm gonna continue to go on," or whatever?
Yeah. The Empire becomes shattered, but it doesn't disappear. And a lot of the novels will bring in people we didn't know about that existed. The Chiss originally, CHISS, are blue-skinned people.
Okay.
Originally were part of the Empire. They were very good militarily, but they didn't necessarily agree with the Emperor, but they followed his rule. They like to keep to themselves. One of the things you'll find in the books is that the Maw, which was in the Solo film, the Maw has hidden great numbers of fleets of Imperial ships and science stations that nobody knows are out there.
Okay.
And from time to time, they'll pop up. Where did you come from? The Maw, that sort of thing. So the Empire doesn't disappear. It fragments. I think that's a good word. It fragments, and a lot of the governors still control the areas they live in, but with not as much force now because the Emperor isn't there to back them up. But all of them have their own military. Most of them will have one or two ships, starships, destroyers and that. And the Chiss are the only ones who are actually the biggest. The biggest fragment of them all is the Chiss Republic, and they actually come to support the Alliance eventually.
Okay.
Spoiler again. Jaina actually marries the head of the Chiss.
Oh.
His name is Jagged Fell.
Okay.
He starts out as a prince, but originally he was a pilot, and then he was a prince, and then he was the leader of the Chiss, and he brings them into the I want to say Federation, into the Alliance is what I mean.
All right. Any major bad guys that pop out, like as far as not just
there's a lot of good books on some of the bad guys. Admiral Thrawn, Grand Admiral Thrawn is a perfect example. He's a great leader who wants to bring the Empire back. He does do a great deal of damage before he's killed. Surprisingly, how he's killed actually.
How's he killed?
Okay, well he has two bodyguards called Nogari, Noghari, Hari. Basically, my picture of them from the book is they're pygmies, the little black pygmies.
Okay.
They're very small, but they're extremely deadly assassins. And they dominate their planet because they are assassins, but they don't like to leave their planet. Backstory to that is Vader makes them leave the planet, and they address Leia as Lady Vader when they see her. Mm-hmm. Backstory. Anyway, he gets killed by the Nogari, and also by one of the apprentices who's changes sides after she leaves the academy.
Okay.
The next one would be Grand Admiral Natasi Dala. she actually becomes leader of the Alliance Republic. They decide when everything comes to a fault, Leia says we need somebody to lead, and she is a strong admiral, so she supports her to take over the Alliance. So oddly, the Galactic Alliance is ruled by a member of the Empire later down the track.
Okay.
So there's her, and then there's the bad guys. There's some of them are. When Luke establishes the apprentices thing on Yavin 4, there's actually a Sith Lord that's encapsulated in the rock of the temple that he picks.
Oh no!
That is Exar Khan, my favourite bad guy. Exar Khan is his name. He appears to all the apprentices and tries to drag them back into the dark, and
he's trapped in rock
in the temple in the actual. Yeah, in the actual thing of the temple.
And he lives there.
He was captured there. He was captured.
I see. Okay, all right.
So there's him, and then there's Darth Caedius down the road, and then there's Jairus Carbuth, who's a spitting image of Luke.
Okay.
He's gone mad. I don't know if I want to call the Killiks the bad guys. There's a trilogy on the Killiks. The Killiks are like giant ants, and they seek to take over the galaxy in their own way, but in a peaceful way, and they have a different way of going about it. Those books hooked me, and they were pretty cool.
Cool.
They use the whole idea that ants have one thought, and everybody shares that one thought. So the ant 10 million miles away thinks, I'm going to have a sandwich now. The ant standing next to you is having a sandwich as well.
Okay.
That kind of thought, you know. So,
right. Like a collective consciousness.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Collective is correct. And then Jaina actually ends up staying there for a while and becoming part of that consciousness, and she learns a lot from that. So that's a good one. And then
I'm going to bring this back to Luke, because there was something I wanted to bring up that I totally forgot about and spaced my mind. And if I don't bring it up now, I will forget. Let's talk about Luke's clone and how they found his hand, and that there is a Luke clone out there somewhere. Did you read those? I heard this from a guy who read the book in the 90s.
I didn't read the specific book.
Okay, all right.
But I have read books where it's referenced in the thing. And I really can't.
Okay.
I really can't expand on that because I only know what I've read of in the other books. I don't know about the actual story itself.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll have to get you that book for Christmas so you can talk about it.
Let's make sure that happens.
Talk about it on the next time we have you on the show.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question too. What story do you wish, as you've read the books, that you really wish that Disney would have gone, oh, that's the story we really need to do? What do you think that they missed? If you could wave a magic wand and they were like, Brian, we're going to put you in charge of the story development of Disney to make the stuff that happens after Return of the Jedi, where would you have picked that story up?
I'd have gone straight to the Vuz and Vong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole invasion of Vuz and Vong. I mean, the story for the Vuz and Vong is it would have been exceptionally good for our time because the nuts and bolts of it is they're greeny environmentalists.
Okay.
They're very much against machinery of any sort. They grow their weapons. They grow their ships.
Oh, wow.
Yorick coral, it's called. The ships are made of Yorick coral. So the environmental background would have been, about right for the 90s and 2000s,
Right.
Also, it would have afforded them a long line of stories because it takes a long time for the Vuz and Vong to be defeated. In fact, they actually take over Coruscant and make Coruscant their own, or Coruscant, depending on what you say it, their own. So that again is another story on itself, and how they're defeated and their actual hatred of the Jedi. It comes through in the books very clearly.
Wow.
And not because they're warriors, but they think that they're an abomination because they use the Force, which is what the Vuz and Vong have in an environmental sense. They think they're exploiting that, and they hate them for that.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of heroes in that.
So that would be a good story.
Yeah.
That if you were the king of Disney and they called you up and said, Brian, we're going to put you in charge, you would have started the story there. You would have.
Let me just go a little bit sideways on that too. The reason I would like that, and the other part that I would choose is the Mandalorian story, because the Vuz and Vong take over the Mandalorian planet during the war. A large part of the planet is destroyed, but it exposes what we know these days as Beskar steel. Beskar, which is the strongest steel known to man. Not vibranium like Superman, like Captain America has, but it's the strongest substance known to man, and that reinvigorates the world and makes the world profitable again, which brings the families back. And I like the whole families coming back with stories about what they've had to do and where they've had to go, and then they had to go back out again.
Oh, okay.
But Luke actually, not spoilers, but Luke actually gets an X-Wing. The last generation of X-Wing is built with Beskar steel. It's given to him by the Mandalorians.
Oh.
And it's the only one of its kind. They'll never build another one. It's just that they did that for Luke. Boba did that for Luke.
Boba did that for Luke.
Yeah.
So they made amends at some point? Or?
It's a respectable... I respect where you are and where I am. I don't agree with you. But, they worked together against the Vuz and Vong, and they worked together on a couple of other things against other people because it suited the Mandalorians for that to happen.
Yeah.
And in fact, it almost falls apart because Boba gives the Alliance a whole battalion of Mandalorians which they sacrifice, which makes things a little bit touchy again all over with them. So
now, I have a question for you,
Yeah.
and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but it's to me, this is just rumors that I heard, and I don't know if it's just somebody spinning ideas or whatever. And this brings us a little bit before A New Hope, because in A New Hope we're told that Darth Vader tracks down the Jedi and kills them. Does he do that with the help of Boba Fett?
No.
No, really? Okay, all right. Because there's a couple things, because it seems like it would be set up for that because, Boba's dad dies at the hand of a Jedi.
Right.
So it seems like you'd have a grudge to carry. And then in Empire Strikes Back, it seems like Boba Fett and Darth Vader have somewhat of a past together because he turns to Boba Fett and says, no disintegrations, especially you.
Right.
No disintegrations. So that doesn't happen. He doesn't...
It doesn't, but the Emperor releases a decree saying that the Jedi have been outlawed and anybody harboring a Jedi would be thing. But he also puts a bounty on their heads.
Okay.
Because he understands that he may not get them all, or that some of them may go into hiding before he has a chance to get them all.
Okay.
And we learn later on in the books that there are more Jedi than just Luke around. One of my favourite characters is Corran Horn, who's actually just a policeman. He's just a copper. But it turns out that he has the Force in him. He just doesn't know it, doesn't know how to use it. And he's encouraged and dragged along by Luke, even though he doesn't want to be a Jedi, into becoming a Jedi.
Oh.
It's a good storyline.
What other Jedis did escape the...
I can't answer that one.
Oh, okay.
I don't know who escaped and who didn't escape. I just know that in the books there are more of them around than just Luke.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me on the program. This is there's actually another topic that I would like to talk with you about particularly, and that is I would like to do the prequels one day, focus on them specifically, and then I would like to do the differences between the reboot of the original and the original. Not the reboot, but all the new stuff that they put in them, talking about that. So we'll have to have you on the show again soon. So I just want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Some Cereal for Dinner podcast. This has been my guest, Brian. And if you like what we're doing here, there's a couple ways you can support us. You can leave a like. You can comment. You can subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that bell notification. If you're just listening to this on the podcast platform, please give us an honest rating and an honest review. It would really go a long way. I'd appreciate it. And if you don't like us, you can hit that thumbs down button twice. Okay, if you don't like us, put that thumbs down button twice, and that'll take care of that. And also, if you want to go that one extra step, you can follow the link below. There's a link where you can support us financially. It's a Buy Me a Coffee link, which is an alternate to Patreon. So basically, if you want to see us upgrade, I'm working on a room here to renovate out. You can see that I got some new microphones from the last time. So we're really working on making this a really profitable and good podcast for people to listen to. So thanks a lot. And I don't know if I said it to share it, but sharing this helps a lot as well. So thank you, Ryan, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, I hope nobody holds me responsible for anything I said wrong.
Yeah, well,
but I'm happy to talk about it anytime.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we'll see you soon. Okay. Hey, everyone. Ian C. here. just wanted to take a moment to really express my thanks for you listening or watching this podcast. It really means a lot to me. And if you're listening to this podcast, I just want to remind you that we do have a YouTube page. And on that YouTube page, we do have some exclusive video footage. So if you like what we're doing here, you'll like what we're doing over there. And if you're already on YouTube, if you like this video, you might also like these videos too.